you hear me? Yep.
Yeah.
Can't really hear this. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody. My name is Adam Powers, and everybody's having a great evening. I'm going to start with some questions, because I want to know what you guys are, what everybody's doing. So, who is working for a startup right now? Okay, who has their own startup? Okay, and who is exploring the possibility of starting a company? Final question, who's got like a profitable bootstrap company or funded? Good. That's good, because I'm going to tell you guys, how I did it, because, this is what makes me qualified to be here. I'm going to help tell you guys this hard-fought experience I've got over the last 3 years. Building a bootstrap company to about 20,000 paying customers and about we power about 1 million websites. The company's called Pagelines, and it started about in 2008. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I got out of school in May of 2008. If anybody remembers, that's right before the apocalypse of the job market. So I have 2 master's degrees, one in biomedical engineering and one in business. And the question, I get out of school thinking, all right, finally, it's time to go out and make some money. I got all this student debt and everything like that, and I got to find a job. Then the economy crashed and the stock market got cut in half, and literally I couldn't figure out a good job. So I had to figure out something to basically make rent. And so that was a pretty hard time for me, just someone hustling. So I took this, but I met this guy while I was doing my MBA that actually worked with Steve Jobs and launched a couple companies you might have heard of. What was called Amazon. He launched Yahoo, and he was doing this MBA with me because he was retired and wanted to teach. And so I got to know him, and after I graduated, couldn't get a job. He offered me a job for the Entrepreneurial Center at San Diego State, basically working with them and working with small companies to build websites. And he thought, he was telling me this internet marketing thing is the future. There's a lot of money in it. All marketing is going this way. He came from an agency background, and I'm an engineer. So I had a startup during the MBA that ultimately failed. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. So, anyways, the moral story is I started working with these small companies. And it didn't take me too long, but I started seeing a few things that just were not as easy as it could be. And there's this software platform. Who knows WordPress? You guys heard of WordPress? All right. So at the time, people were just using it for blogging, and meanwhile, I'm building these custom websites for people, manually doing everything from uploading, sitemaps to Google to first creating sitemaps, doing SEO, actual HTML source code, and all these things. And here's this WordPress thing where there's like literally 10,000 extensions. It's for blogging, but I just see this kind of point where I'm like, this is the future. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have any role in that, but this is like the future. So I started building these tools for clients based on this WordPress at the time. And we're the first ones. Nobody was doing full-on websites with WordPress. So we started doing this, and it was working well for my clients, and we built this software, and I decided that, it's pretty useful. I'd give it away for free on our website. I had this Pagelines kind of consulting business. Yeah.
It's like I'm hearing myself as I'm talking, but that's better. Now I don't feel like I'm talking into like a dead mic. So continue the story. I had this software I was using for clients, and I gave it away for free on the website. That was at the time a consulting, just like here's this small business service that we do, Pagelines. And I gave it for free, and it got a little bit popular. It was doing about 40 downloads a day. That's not popular by any means, but it was something like, all right, this is positive feedback that this is useful to people. So I iterated that, and I was working with some client, and they had this internet marketing problem. I'm like, well, maybe I can make one of these for you, like this piece of software, just build on it and give away for you. And I did that for them, and I'm like, this is totally out of line with what they're trying to do. It was kind of like cheesy marketing. So I put it on my website, and I spent a bunch of time making just like a little bit better version. And all of a sudden, it's doing 200 downloads a day. And the real insight after that was when somebody said, you should just actually make a pro version, and because people will buy it, because I spent all my time doing support for this product and doing it all for free. It was an experiment, but that gets pretty old pretty quick when you're working for free. So I created this pro version with like just a few little features, and all of a sudden we're starting to sell this thing a couple times a week. I was not making a lot of money. So it's going to be one of the first lessons I'm going to talk about, is how starting small is one of the most important things in getting a real company going. And every company I know has actually done this. So I'm going to come back to that in a sec once I'm done. So we started small, $100 a week. But after like 6 months, I had saved up like, a couple grand. That's enough to go to Mexico or something. It's not, it's just okay. I had a consulting job and everything. But I was still struggling trying to get a real job that paid the real bills and everything like that. And I decided that this was all cool, but it just really didn't reflect my personal or professional brand that well, because I hadn't spent a lot of time like really trying to make it look professional, like this is what I can do. And so I made a calculated decision, like I'm just going to make this product that wasn't selling that much at the time look as freaking awesome as I could. And if I did that, then hopefully it would reflect well on me, and maybe we'd sell a few more. And but I didn't think there was a market, because we're just selling this. I guess in retrospect, it makes a lot more sense that there's a market. But we're just selling this framework for building a website. There's so much competition out there. So in time, I didn't think it was a great business idea, but I did it. And all of a sudden, after that, and I doubled the price because I was sick of doing all this support. And so I doubled the price, and all of a sudden, the day after that came out, we're selling 4 or 5 a day for $50. So all right, now we're taking $200 a day, and I quit my job. Now we start promoting this thing. So I quit my job then, and I start promoting this thing. So soon we're making like 10 sales a day, 20 sales a day. And then, so like we straighten out of this. At that point, I was like, wow. There's just a lot of people in the world that want websites. So it was an interesting, kind of revelation that we're selling the software and we're driving people traffic to our website, and we would just sell this very consistent amount of this software. And I just didn't realize that there's 5 billion people in the world. So if you can sell something to a few people, there's ultimately going to be a lot more people out there that want it. So after that came out, we were selling this framework, which is a static kind of theme template for WordPress. I had this, we were doing support, a lot of support for these customers that are trying to customize their websites. And they always wanted to customize something that could not be customized. And we were just supporting them, trying to show them how to do it. And then we had a second revelation, which was like, people want websites that they can build without coding, or they can customize without coding. So we kind of came up with this framework for drag and drop web design, which allows you to drag and drop pieces of web design around your website. And I spent a ton of time, again, trying to make it look great and work great. And we came out with that, and we covered it on TechCrunch. And now we triple or quadruple sales again. So this came from this thing which I was happy to make, $100 a week, or free at the beginning. A couple years later, we're doing over, $1 million in revenue, and it's just me and some support people. So that's really how we got started. It was just an iterative process. And And that's the nuts and bolts of our story today. And I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, so I'm going to talk about a few lessons I've learned along the way, a couple of the red herrings about starting a business that I see, mistakes that I see people making all the time in San Francisco and everywhere else, that come from just a lot of mixed perceptions about how things get started. A lot of people do it different ways. Like there's the VC model where you raise money, and there's, that's a completely different formula, right? So the first lesson, or the first thing I want to talk about is some of the tips and tricks to really get something started if you don't have, like a rich dad, or, or like if you don't have, some kind of bonus point for getting started. And I was debating using the whiteboard, but I actually, nah, never mind, I won't do that. The first thing to remember in getting a company started is to start small. The thing that the VCs or whatever they talk about having big ideas, right? Going for a big idea. Who's ever heard that? Right? They always talk about having this big idea because anybody can do it. And that's the only kind of ideas they want to fund. But the reality is they don't fund those ideas unless you already have traction. So most ideas, including, say, Facebook, everybody likes to bring up Facebook. That was a project. Like Zuckerberg said that was a small project he did in his dorm room, and it had a project feel until they got offered like $1 billion for the company. That was when he realized that this was more of a big idea. And you go to investors, and they talk about how we like big ideas, but they like to fund, sometimes teams that have had success in the past, they can have a big idea and go to investors, get a lot of money. Like Square does that. But nobody learns that way, because there's just so many mistakes that you can make getting things going. So a lot of times you don't understand what people will pay for. You don't know if they'll you think that they'll pay for some service, and then they won't, and then they'll pay for something that you don't even have to do anything. They'll pay a lot of money. And that's really one of the main revelations I had, is I was trying to do this consulting thing. I couldn't get any customers to sign up, and even though I was willing to work my ass off to do that, but then I started giving away this piece of software, which cost me nothing. And people are paying, hundreds of dollars for it, and just downloading off my website, and I would get an email. So that's one of the things. One of the other big lessons I've learned over the years is that your brand and the way you name your company has a ton of impact on your long-term strategy. So I read this thing, if you guys are open to this, I read this thing called the Igor Naming Guide, which really changed a lot of the way I think about branding. It talked about the long-term impact of what your brand can do to your strategy. So, for example, in my business, you have this WordPress aspect, and we're ultimately about websites, but everybody in the business calls themselves WP XYZ, or this press. And that means that they're stuck on WordPress forever. So that's one thing I would suggest, is that you never put or even suggest what you do in the name of your company, so that you can actually become bigger than your initial target market, and you can iterate. That's the power of, say, a Google brand. So that's the second lesson, is just pay attention to what your brand stands for in the future as well as today. And there's some really good resources that I could point you guys to. This is one thing I want to talk about today, since it's so commonly screwed up. The third thing, and I think we were talking about this, is competition in the beginning is actually a good thing. I've seen a lot of companies get shut down by having competition. So, people get out, they'll talk about this idea, and they'll be like, isn't XYZ doing this company? Well, the truth is, competition gives you a lot of good ideas about what works. Because again, it's a consistent, and relentless experiment you got to run to create a successful company. So in my business, there's like 1 billion website builders out there, but still building websites isn't easy. There's no winner take all yet. So we're out there, you know, everybody's trying to make it easy, and it's just a hard problem to solve. But we go to the competition and say, all right, well, what's working for them, and how can we make it better? And it's never hurt us. So I would argue that having competition is actually a good thing. And I should go back. I had a startup when I was doing an MBA, and this is how I got on the internet in the first place. It was doing a healthcare, LinkedIn, get this, LinkedIn for physicians. And I thought that was the best idea ever because, you know, you've got LinkedIn, you know, physicians, they have a hard time talking. They don't have, you know, they're always doing referrals and everything like this. And I had a background in medical engineering and stuff, so I thought I knew what I was talking about. So I worked on my ass off on this thing for 2 years, learned how to code, did all this. Then I get it out there, and I find out that nobody really wants it. So I'm just like, you know, I'm like, oh, but at the time I was like, there's no competition. There was no competition. But like, there's reasons there's no competition, because doctors, you can't get them to do anything, especially if it's on the computer. Just letting you guys know, in case you're working on something similar. So the truth is, I learned that having competition allows you to see what a good idea is. So, to recap, getting things started, I want you, my suggestion is, if you guys start small with something that's not like $1 billion, or even an idea that's going to, you know, help you quit your day job, just start small on something. If there's competition, if there's people making money, you'll be able to iterate to, you know, something that is significantly bigger. It's just a lot. If you can create value, you can actually make a lot of impact, right? So the fourth thing, I guess, that I always harp on in my business is karma is what's important. So people are always trying to get what's something good for them, right? And they're always trying to make money. And I think as an entrepreneur, the thing that will kill you the fastest, the thing that will destroy, you know, your dreams as an entrepreneur will be looking out for yourself first. If you work your ass off to create value and just help people, you know, the money will come. Like the money, the sales, people, if you actually just focus on helping somebody, you know, it doesn't matter if you think it's going to make a lot of money at first or ever, but if you help people, you just be extremely surprised at, A, how much they're willing to pay you to help them, because there's a law of reciprocity, and the amount that they're willing to contribute, help you, promote you if you actually succeed in that. So, karma's important. All right, so those are some of the tricks that, and then, you know, like things I've learned that were counterintuitive when I was getting started. The second lesson I had today is that about how to create a great product. I'll start with Steve Jobs said that business is really simple. It's as simple as, you know, you figure out how to create a great product, you figure out how to tell people about that product, and you put it in front of them in a way that makes them want to buy it. So I actually think about that a lot, because it really helps me understand like the steps I need to take to do anything. And you have to do all three of those things, but it starts with a great product. And as I've gone forward and created this thing, it's all about the experience that the customer has. That means it's not just about, you know, what does this do for them? What does it help them solve? It's about the way they get support. It's about the first, you know, impression of the product. You know, so when I started out, it was about what are the features and functionality, and I would ignore, you know, like the getting started phase of this software. Disaster, you know, people are asking for refunds, you know, they're all confused, and then they're like, and then I wouldn't hire enough support people, and then the support times would be long. Again, you know, unhappy customers, you know, they think the product sucks because they can't figure out how to use it. So the moral of the story is that it's about the entire start to, you know, like the idea, like when they're becoming familiar with the product, all the way from a successful end result. So we really invest a lot in, the first 10 minutes of the first 10 minutes with the product, all the way through, staffing support 24/7, when none of our competition does that. Just because we think that a good customer experience, goes along with that karma piece, really drives ultimate success with this thing. And that's the reason we've continued to grow as a company, doing that stuff. So that's the second thing, the whole experience piece. And then finally, I want to talk about iteration and focus. So you hear people talk about focus a lot. This whole idea like focus is important, but I didn't really know what that meant until recently. It's the concept that 20% of what you do drives 80% of the results. And when you're getting started, there's like a billion distractions. Should I worry about the legal stuff? Should I worry about, should this be on the homepage and that? And what about testimonials? Who should I call? And you got all these things that you got to deal with. And so it comes down to focus and knowing what matters. And that's why having good advisors is really important. People that have continued to iterate these things over the years and taken stuff off, say their website, or have, removed or played with different concepts in their product. And solving that problem really has been a major thing in growing the company from, so now we have 12 employees, and that becomes important as you get more and more people, because you have to continually align people's ideas around what you're working on. So I guess that's the few of the concepts I want to talk about. So if you guys have any questions, I'm better with questions about anything and everything. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about some of the things people don't really think about, like the smart, you mentioned like the legal, for example, that stuff that you don't really want to focus on as much maybe, but it's still going to come back to how you do it?
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot of that has to do with the type of business you're in. But you see a lot of people getting started, like completely worried about, getting sued about a patent, or they need a patent for this or that. And I think that it's just lawyers are really good at talking you out of your money that way. Oh, you better figure that out. But like I've seen people literally waste half their time worried about the legal and regulatory stuff in the beginning of their business, and ultimately it didn't ever matter. Like I would recommend. I mean. The one person that does this will actually get sued, but no, but like fear will cause you to do that. And I would say like it's more important to get something out there. So if it's going to take a lot of time, I would just recommend you just do the bare minimum you think you can get away with there. Like, well, I tried to get it all that stuff handled, and then if it ever does get it, you can have an excuse, you have an out. But that's actually something I've seen people screw up a lot. Any other questions along that direction?
I mean, just thinking of stuff like even the basic legal stuff, like setting up the co-founders' equity, and like maybe if you're securing like the friends and family rounds, like doing convertible debt, like those types of things that like people don't tend to think about.
Sure. Well. Okay, yeah, well that stuff should be pretty easy, right? Yeah, like if you're going to a lawyer, like I have a great startup attorney, that's a quick thing. The lawyer's like, all right, well, they should get this much. There's articles. If you're talking to the right people and you are in the right spot, if you're talking to the right people, those should be easy questions to answer. But, like talk to one lawyer, pay him $1,000, tell him to set it up, or a couple grand to set up your stuff, and you're on your way. But again, you're not going to waste a lot of time dealing with that, so it's not a big distraction. I've seen people like write up their own patents like before and do a bunch of patent research, and I did that when I was an undergrad, and one of the first projects I ever did. So lesson learned. Sure.
One of the things you said was like investors will put money if you want traction.
Yeah.
But so for instance, I have a product right now, and I have to do a presentation to the investors in 1 month. We're deciding between should we get the product perfect and launch it to market, only launch it to market after we have it perfect, or should we put this market before and try to iterate after getting feedback?
Oh yeah.
Which way is better, like launch it
I like that. I guess that's a good question because there's a right answer. The right answer really is put it out there. Because, you know, I've never seen this happen. I've never seen people raise money that haven't had like a track record of success without some kind of traction or a really, really compelling product. So the right answer is if you have a really, really compelling product, put it out there because you're going to learn actually that it's not probably got a lot of issues. My story is even this last year we were doing like the second major release of our core platform, and we were launching an app store, like an app store kind of model of our own. And I'm like thinking this is going to revolution. I mean, it really is kind of a cool concept for building websites. What we launched, and we're working on it for a long time, and I'm talking it up, and we get it out there, and I realized that building this app store thing takes a lot of like collaboration with other people, and you have to have a lot of traction with your platform. I mean, the app store thing is really, it's all the hype because of, you know, the app store with Apple, but they knew how to do it. And so we launched it, and I learned very quickly that it's a pretty hard thing to manage, you know. So, and it wasn't initially, for us, a big deal. You know, we're iterating, but I actually think the next iteration of our app store is going to be like what we initially intended it to be. But again, I thought we had it all dialed in before. So I learned that after the fact.
Do you think like customers, even if they use it and you're not like fully functional, you don't have all the functions, they'll come back after you?
Well, you'd learn when you get something out there, you'll learn that it's completely different than, I mean, unless you're really, I mean, I'm speculating, but I mean, you always like get some insight and you're like, oh, I can't believe that we didn't get that. Like every time. And so that's why iteration and like getting real feedback from learning about what your customers want at every stage in the game is so important. So I recommend, like I was saying, like it started small. Like I recommend going for some like lowball customers. Maybe there's not a ton of them, but like there's a lot of segments of the market that are underserved, and you just get something out there, start talking to them. You make a little money and learn a few things, and then you start iterating towards like the bigger customer markets or the bigger markets, competing with the bigger and you know, bigger products that have more money. So that's what we're doing actually. So we're in this WordPress space, but we're heading in the direction of, you know, we want to revolutionize the way people build websites with our next release. And we're planning on, right now we have to sell the framework. We're planning on giving it away for free. So to me, combination of making websites super easy to build and giving away for free means lots and lots of customers, right? So it takes a lot of iterations to get that kind of product. But I think it could be, you know, that could be a very successful kind of play. That's what Facebook did and all that stuff. So, yeah, so my thinking is for you, have you read The Lean Startup? I've heard, yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about that, you know, kind of idea. And there's a lot of good books, like Crossing the Chasm is another one. There's a ton of good books on the science of just getting stuff out there and iterating. Yeah. All right. Anybody over here? Yeah, I'm a big reader, so I would definitely say that that's contributed to my success. I've got like a list of a ton of books on everything from, you know, branding, which is one of my passions, to product development, to marketing strategy, to yeah. Well, I can talk to Pierre about it after the talk and send you guys a list of the best books. There's a book called Positioning that everybody should read. One of the best books that, I mean, even CEOs that I talk to these days, if they haven't read it, I'm like, read it, and then they're like, dude, that was the best thing you ever did for me. You're awesome. And yeah, a book called Positioning. It's like the Bible on marketing strategy, Crossing the Chasm. And then there's other books that are super overrated. But, yeah, I want to talk about those. Dang it.
I was just interested in what you said earlier. You're going to make your product available for free. So your business model behind that would be?
Sure. All right. So I've had a lot of revelations lately, since, meeting so many, I was having drinks with the CEO of Dropbox the other night and talking to him about what worked for them. And I was hanging out with another guy at a billion-dollar company. And just some of the kind of advice they give me there, I'm like, start arguing with them, like, no, you don't. And then I'm like, oh, you're right. And so some of that stuff is like, one guy CEO said to me that you either have to target basically everybody, like try and go for like 10 million users. That's 10 million like active recurring users, or you have to go for just the big boys, and that's the Oracle model where they just sell to $1 million contracts, or the Seagate or whatever. And those are the two kinds of companies that can really blow up. And you'll notice that every company you hear about has some kind of real compelling free version of their software. So in just the software business, and this doesn't go for if you're a traditional business or if you're anything like, maybe a little bit off. But you gotta drive the cost of your product down so that it becomes better and better deal. And then real usage, like people pay for all kinds of weird things. Like you'll learn out of this iteration process. People pay for stuff like status, right? Something they can show off. And why do you guys think people buy Picassos? Because I have another story I tell people. Like Picasso's a great, he's a great artist. But I don't really respect him as an artist. I respect him as a businessman. I'll tell you why. Because when he actually did his best work, he was in his 20s, and he's making like minimum wage, or the equivalent of like $500 a month, living in somebody's studio. And he was painting, and he did all his best work in the beginning, in his 20s, painting great things, and he built his personal brand. But later on in his career, and you can go down by Union Square, they've got some Picassos. He actually hired a bunch of people to like paint paintings for him, and he would sign them. And on those paintings, if you go to there's that gallery on Union Square. If you go to that gallery, you can go in there and you can look at original Picassos, signed by him. They've got there's one I was looking at. I was like, how much is this? Like, it's like 1.3 million. And it looked like it was drawn in crayon. Has his signature out of 14 on it. And I'm like, in Roman numerals. And I'm like, what's that mean? He's like, well, that's the 14th piece he did that day, right? So he was just like pumping these things out. But he learned that people are just buying the status. They're buying that signature. So again, I'm sure if Facebook rolled out premium accounts, people would be buying those things like hotcakes and stuff. So it's like, whenever people talk about not monetizing when you have lots and lots and lots of customers, that's ridiculous because it's not really that hard to figure something out. I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat, and some business models are more profitable than others, which is another lesson, if it's okay to tell you guys about business models. For a long time, we had this straight software sales model. We were selling this framework. We were acquiring 30, 40 customers a day, doing all the support and everything indefinitely into the future, and off this one initial software sale. And we did this for a couple of years, and I'm thinking, well, recurring's a better business model, but it's kind of a hassle. Well, just recently, 6 months ago, actually about a year ago now, we repackaged what we're doing in a recurring business model, and now we get people paying monthly for basically the same thing we were selling for a flat rate, and our customers are worth over the long haul a lot more, and our revenue is a lot more consistent. So but again, it comes down to iteration and just figuring stuff out as you go. But yeah, but business model engineering should be an art. Another question. Yeah.
Did your final product, or the product how it is now, is it a lot different from your initial idea? And how did you manage to somehow resist or give in to outside influences? I think you always have some mental model of what you want to do.
Sure.
But then there's always these influences, and I think that's very somehow important to go this way in between.
Yeah, so that's another good question, because there's a really easy way, literally a good trick I have for actually steering your product direction. And I don't know if you guys have, anybody heard of the golden circles or the 3 circles, the reason why kind of speech by Salman Sayek? The short answer to your question is you start with, it's all about the reason why you're creating a product and the reason why your business exists. Most companies out there start with the what. But you notice the great companies start with the why. So for example, like a lot of the banks, they're out there to, what do? They make money. How do they do it? They do their banking stuff. Why? Or no. What do? They do their banking stuff. How do they do it? You know, they put up their branches, whatever, and then why? To make money. So that's the kind of the standard schema that businesses use. Well, but Apple and everybody else, they start with why. Like, why? We want to change the way people think. We want to change the way people create. How? Well, we create, you know, electronics and an infrastructure for that. What? Well, right now we're launching this computer that gets us there, right? So they start with the why. And so if you have this why in your head about why a business, your product exists, then it becomes very easy to steer the direction or make changes to it. And they'll always make sense, because for Pagelines, it's like we love making people successful and independent. Like that's my goal, is I want people to be, you know, have better lives and more independent, fulfilling lives, because they have a business that works on the internet or whatever. That's why we do it. How? Well, we make tools for websites, and we make tools that really help empower them. And so what? Well, we're releasing XYZ product, XYZ date, and then we're iterating always to make that a better kind of fit. So to answer your question, that's how we decided to switch it up, and that's why, again, we're going free and everything like that. Yeah.
So you earlier said there's a naming guide. You said something.
Yes.
What is that naming guide?
Yeah. So I recommend everybody in this room, if you haven't heard of it, read the Igor naming guide. Yeah, IGOR. The guy I worked with at the Entrepreneurial Center that did Amazon and Yahoo and basically did every brand that came out in the 90s in the Valley here, he suggested I read it, and it really blew my mind, because, you know, most people most people screw up the name of their company, and it really doesn't help. Like, for example, and then another thing I see is people naming their company because of the domain name they can get. Don't do that, all right? So don't even, my suggestion is learn what goes a good name, figure out what a name is, then figure out what domain to use. Because I see all kinds of great brands with, like, get this brand. Like Dropbox was Get Dropbox. And they're worth $5 billion, so they didn't get that wrong. So, yeah.
One follow-up question, the book you were talking about, is that positioning the battle for your mind?
Yes, you already bought it.
Honest way.
Yeah, so, exactly. Any other questions, guys?
I've been in San Francisco for 30 days. The solo work is getting a little bit tough. At the same time, I don't think it's being here on my lips or even if you know someone like that.
Sure.
So when you're looking to bring someone on board, should it be a thing where they sit back, absorb the sitcom down the culture a little bit more, or is it, you know, you deal with you guys and you create?
Yeah, so that's the traditional, startup kind of model. Gets a co-founder, you know, try and get into like Y Combinator and all that stuff and build it. My opinion is that even if you're doing in your phase of your business, I mean, even you as a visionary or whatever should be out consulting other businesses, getting paid to try and to build things for other businesses, and then use that to build your product. That's my model, and that's kind of like not sexy enough for a lot of people to do, but I guess in my opinion is that if you need somebody to build something like that, then you gotta spend the time to find them. But then again, working with other people in the beginning, man, getting them to work with you, and if you're really, really persuasive and lucky, that'll happen. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen like perfect duos very often since I've been here. So I guess what I'm evangelizing is like kind of a system for getting started. And for me, it's just consulting, get something going, and then everybody wants to be a part of it, you know. That's how it worked for me. Like, so, you know, when I was trying to get started with my other businesses, nobody thought, no, I couldn't get any kind of talented people on board. And if I did, it would be a lot of problems. Like, they wouldn't answer emails fast enough, or they wouldn't work hard enough. And that was just, I never solved that problem. But then once I had traction on a product, on a kind of standalone basis, like, everybody was interested. And then it still takes time to find good people. But
how did you build your initial traction?
How did I build it? Well, so it just giving a product away for free that people liked. So I came out with that framework. I posted it on the website and like linked to it from some other sites. And people started downloading it, and I started like asking me questions about it. And then, so just giving a product away for free at first was our initial marketing strategy, and that was experiment. And then we started doing, and then once we started doing like a couple $100 a day, I, you know, went out and made some calls, got some marketing stuff done with people or like thought leaders in the field, and that's how we grew it from 200 to 1,000. You know, that was just basically awareness, like I said. So it's a good product. Once you got that solved, then you have to solve the problem of getting people to know about it, and then you have to put it in front of them in a way that makes them want to buy it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your marketing strategy initially?
Sure. Yeah. So. Like initially, or more like now, how I think about it?
Well, lessons learned from, you know, because as a bigger company, your strategy might be different than when you're starting.
Right. So you don't need much in the very beginning. So when you're starting out, giving away something valuable for free is really good. Is really a strong thing. The other thing I've seen working is just like guerrilla marketing. Like my friend Marin, who runs a company called Zirtual. When I met her, she was basically broke and living in a studio apartment with 2 other guys. So she talked these 2 other guys to coming out and helping her at their company, and they're all living in a studio apartment. And I don't know why they all thought it was a good idea, but they were just doing this virtual assistant thing, and they were just doing this thing, but giving away virtual assistants to people, and people would sign up and so on. But she's a really good networker, and so because of the nature of her business, where people with no time, which is basically everybody in San Francisco, wants a virtual assistant, she kind of solves that problem. So she's going out and doing guerrilla marketing, and even just in San Francisco, and she's built it up to several hundred customers, and it's like $200 to $500 a month. So they're doing like really well. And now they can talk about ways to start bringing in technology and iterating towards like bigger and bigger ideas. So ultimately, I think her company is going to do really, really well. But it's like a long process. So guerrilla marketing. There's another book I read, Guerrilla, like this one people talk about all the time, but it's like guerrilla marketing. And that one can be useful too for marketing ideas.
You said the order the picture goes like why, how, and then finally what, right?
Right.
So let's say someone already has a product, you already came up with the what. What do you suggest he does there to figure out the why?
They start with the why.
Yeah, you start with the why. I mean, however, actually that's not necessarily true. Maybe you fall like what I did. I fell into like a what. Like, all right, this kind of works, but like why? So I was like, but it's working, so like why? Why is it working? And then I just like, is it helping people build awesome websites? That's what the why was. So I started like, all right, iterating on that concept. So just focus on the why as you iterate and get bigger and bigger things. So for example, Zirtual's company, well, the what is like virtual assistants right now, but why do people want that? They want that because it's helping them save time, helping them become, more effective, living better lives. All right, well, what else could we do to make a product better along that vision?
The why people are buying it, or why are you doing it?
Yeah, why the people are buying it. Yeah, so yeah, it can't be about you, you know. That's the secret of karma, right? If you figure out the why and you actually succeed on that, you'll get taken care of and be very respected, I'm sure.
What is your take on outsourcing the technical parts of the engineering of ideas or of your product?
Yeah, that's an good question, because I'm a technical guy. I've become that way because I care about the product so much, and I've had a hard time getting out of it. But the answer to that question is a little bit, it depends on your idea, and it depends on what really is, like what is really the critical thing in your idea. Is like, because if you outsource it, the technical implementation is not going to be very good generally. But sometimes that's not that important for an initial product. So you just got to make sure it's built in the right kind of, on the right type of platform, and then you can iterate on that.
Do you think in the long run it's important to have a technical guy on your team, or is a technical co-founder necessary?
Well, for most ideas, it's pretty useful. Or like a product person. They talk about there's three types of founders that work. There's the networker, there's the visionary, and then there's the operations person. And they're all kind of conducive to different types of businesses. But the visionary, you know, is generally pretty product focused. So for that, you're going to want a technical person on the team to kind of make sure that everything is just beautiful, and you know, because it starts with the product. You can only be as successful as your product.
Sure.
You mentioned that you worked in the consulting industry
Sure.
before venturing into the startup world, let's say. How much did this help you, and would you suggest us as undergrads in my case to go and work for big corporations or maybe do some experience in investment banking, consulting, something like that before starting my own thing? Or would you say it's not necessary? Like, how much value would that add?
Okay, well, yeah, so yeah, let me clarify. If you want to use consulting as a kind of a platform to starting your own company, it's important you do the right type of consulting. So for example, when I was an MBA student, I tried to do that eDoctor, LinkedIn for Physicians idea. It didn't ever work because I had no real fundamental understanding what people would pay for or what they would actually use. And all the market factors that would lead to a successful product there. So if I'd really wanted to be successful doing that, what I should have thought about was going out and consulting, you know, figuring out how to make doctors' offices, I don't know, run more effectively. You know, build those skills. I would just show up and be like, here's how I can help you do that. Help them set up like medical record systems. If I was doing that, like I know for a fact that people are making money doing that, so I could probably go out and consult, just saying, I'll set you up with medical record systems. All right, learn that. All right, well, for long you're going to get really frustrated with certain problems, and you'll get insights about things that people are going to pay for, and then you just start creating products for that. So that's the kind of, so I don't mean go to like investment bank, and because, you know, you're not going to learn any of those insights there. You know, if you want to be an investment banker, I would, but so that's the conditions for that. Yeah.
Sorry, just one more question.
I like questions, guys.
You mentioned with the feedback earlier on, and that's obviously a huge part of the lean startup methodology and everything, but I was just wondering specifically, I mean, were you just going off of angry support emails and like, oh, we need to fix that? Or were you actually reaching out to people who are purchasing your product and saying, what do you guys like? What do you do? Like, what were some of the channels that you're using to get that feedback?
So we tried both, actually. And I think both of those different channels have their purpose. But what I've learned over the years is, like Steve Jobs said, you can't ask people what they want because they don't know what's possible. So when ahead of like creating some of our most successful launches, ahead of those were usually some big failures, you know, some big things that didn't work as planned. And that usually humbled me or us enough so that we actually started looking for insights and like asking for more feedback. And I believe that actually failure sets you up for success. You know, being humble about what you know and like opens you up to switching your mindset. So what I did was I'd ask, people what they want. And they'd say, oh, we want options for this and this and that. Just add these things on there. Very it's like asking, what do you want in the next iPhone? I want it to be faster. It's very iterative. However, the real insights that are breakthrough don't come from that kind of feedback. They come from knowing the types of things people buy that they don't think they'll buy, or that they, I think Gary Vaynerchuk said, if you asked people if you would use Foursquare, when it first came out, most people would just say, nah, I'm not going to use that. But, as they're iterating, if you check in at whatever bar and they give you a free shot of Jack Daniels, you'll start using that. So people don't really know what they'll use ahead of it. So again, in the case of us, looking at and seeing what frustrated people that I couldn't help them with very easily led to some of the bigger insights. So just knowing frustration is somewhere you can innovate. Yeah?
If you decided to cash out tomorrow, what new business would you start on Monday?
Oh man, you're gonna make me think. Man, that's a good and tough question, because I haven't thought about that for a little bit. But well, the mobile space is hot, and I think that's going to go far. However, I really love internet business and the idea of creating recurring cash flows. Create some kind of software platform, host it, and then you charge monthly, and it just continues to grow. So I'm really used to that recurring thing. So I wouldn't create an app. I can tell you that much. I'd create something that definitely has just straight recurring thing and build some software and iterate on it. And I have a lot of insights from problems that we have that I think would be awesome if they were solved. Better ways to create infrastructure for making people satisfied with the product is one idea that I've definitely thought somebody could just nail. But then there's even easy things, just simple technical things that would probably take me 3 days to figure out. I mean, not super simple. Obviously, it would take me less time. But there's some simple issues I run into all the time that maybe aren't so sexy, but they take 3 days to figure out. You turn that into a product, start recurring. I would pay for that product because I just don't want to worry about it ever, and I want them to deal with it. I use their product, and they'll make their product better, and it's just really not that hard to create some useful stuff and that you can charge for. I actually got started thinking about internet marketing by looking at who knows who Neil Patel is? Anybody? Yeah, he does Kissmetrics, but at the time he was doing this crazy egg thing, and I was friends with some people, and I didn't really know him that well, but I knew people that knew him, and he was killing it on how much money they were making at the time. And I started reverse engineering what they were doing. They had this little widget thing on their website. It was cool, and other people would put it on their websites, and they would charge $10 a month. It doesn't take that long to get a couple thousand customers, and the iterative costs are zero. And and the people are really happy. They get what they want, and it's all automated. So it's just a beautiful business to be in, and you're actually making people happy. So that's what.
So why did you say you wouldn't go to that?
What's that?
Why did you say you wouldn't also go to that?
Well, for an app, say on where you're selling one-off stuff on mobile or whatever, you got to be careful when you see stuff in the news about how much money people are making, because a lot of times there's people that are PR people that are promoting that for a reason. So Apple has very good PR people that want to promote the top making apps, so that everybody else thinks, oh, this is obviously the ticket to making lots of money, so they could jump on board the Apple ship. And but the truth is that's all about Apple and them building out their platform. So, so you got to be careful around that stuff. A lot of the real money that's being made, nobody's talking about. One of our, there's this company, Envato, they do the same thing. They have a store, and they're always promoting, whoever's ever making the most money, and that drives more people. So, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that there's a couple problems that you have in your business that you definitely want other people to make and
that you pay for?
Sure.
What are some?
Oh, well, I mean, here's the obvious one. So let me make this. It's super simple. Who knows what GitHub is? They're here in Soma. All right. Well, we use it to manage our code, a lot of our code, and everybody's using it. And we have this other infrastructure, this thing called Beanstalk, which we also have to use because they do deployments of code. Meaning they send, what that means is just basically it sends our code to servers so that we can manage it. But no, there's no easy way to deploy stuff from GitHub. I mean, there is if I wanted to like spend and build my own, write some code and install some other scripts on a server and deal with all that stuff. But I would rather just go to a website that says, on my homepage, it says, we do deployments from GitHub. It's like a 3-day project, So like those insights are super easy. And then you just say, all right, it's $10 a month or whatever. You start selling it, And I have several of those. Like we've had problems with support infrastructure. Like our support forums are always being complained about. I've got one of my guys here, he actually just showed up. As a community manager in from Chicago. But he knows that we get complaints about our forum all the time and the infrastructure there. So it's just like if somebody created like a support forum infrastructure, that's a conversation I'd have to have with somebody. But like that's the idea of consulting is you get these little insights that lead to good product ideas that are simple.
100% agree with you about forums. If it was better forums.
Yeah. So you know my pain. Yeah. Well, you have to install them all on your own server. Yeah, it's a long conversation, and I'd actually have to dig deep. I just avoid stuff like that sometimes. Try not to think about it. Because every business has problems, Like there's just so many problems out there to solve that it's just really shouldn't be that. I guess the insight that I think is important is that there's just tons of problems, and it's really not that hard to start businesses. But everybody starts with like this grandiose idea, or like I'm going to make the next Facebook. It's like it's analogous to like there's a cliff you want to get on top of. You're like I want to get on top of that cliff, and then you just run at the cliff and you try and claw your way up, right? And you just go straight at that big idea. When the real answer is you go like there's stairs over there. Some people are like, well, you just take the stairs. And like, I don't have time to take the stairs, So they try and scale this cliff, and everybody, most people fall off the cliff to their death, which means a 9-to-5 job. And, so, so the moral of the story is like, the real trick is to have patience, I think, and start small with less sexy ideas and iterate. Who else got something for me? Yeah.
How do you advise us to kind of say evaluate the potential of an idea? So if somebody has, for example, different ideas and we don't really know if any of them is going to work out or one is better than the other, you can like suggest how to do that, talk to customers before building it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to experiment to some degree. Like I would say that you should try like a lot of small ideas and just try and create a little bit of value. Maybe if you're like have a general direction, you're like, well, maybe I can make something in 3 weeks and then see if people want it. Like if you're trying to spend 6 months to trying to develop something before anybody even sees it, you're already in trouble, in my opinion. So if you can do it in 3 weeks and you see like, give it away for free or put it on some website. Or knock
it up on WordPress or whatever you want to do, and then see if people actually use it. That's key. Because it really is not that easy to know.
It's kind of a similar question to the inventory. I mean, if your product isn't really ready and isn't good, and isn't how you want it to be, probably not many people are going to use it.
Right.
The product that I want to offer is going to be ready in, say, half a year.
Yeah, but that's like going to the top of the cliff first, right? So start small, like put something out there. Like what my conclusion was after failing the physician idea was like I was going to just do a new idea every month and do like 12 ideas a year. So I worked on that physician idea for like 2 years. I learned a lot that allowed me, helped me out later on, but like I never really got anything done with that. So moral of the story, I decided to do idea every month, and I made it 2 months, like of doing that before it worked out. So try that. know. Yeah.
Talking about sort of starting small with product only, what about service ideas? I know you were referring to the virtual assistant concept earlier on.
Sure.
Services, are you suggesting essentially just do it manually as much as possible and then develop the product afterwards? What's your I guess, a small version of a service?
Well, I guess it comes down to, are you an operational type entrepreneur? Are you visionary product guy? Or you're visionary? Yeah, so that's a good question then. Like I know a lot of different types of CEOs that have different types of businesses that work, and I'm like, I could never do that. I could never do that company, like Marin's, for example. But she's built a very manual, service business, and then she's going to backport technology into it. In our case, we started with just the software download, and we didn't really have a service. If I get your question, we didn't have a service for a long time after that, and that's definitely where we want to be. So, I think that manually is a good way to prove your concept if you can pull it off. Again, a lot of these questions are all about what you're trying to do. So, yeah. Good. All right, we done? All right. Thanks, guys.